itu apakah layak research problem itu diajukan dan sebagainya, itu nanti kita mungkin bisa angkat atau kita bisa diskusikan lebih dalam ketika question and answer. Jadi mungkin nggak perlu perkenalkan diri lagi ya. Insya Allah tadi yang disampaikan Dr. Muhammad sudah cukup komprehensif. Saat ini saya di Center for Professional Development, jadi bukan hanya e-learning, tapi juga semua yang berkaitan tentang pedagogi, professional development, e-learning. Jadi lebih besar portfolionya karena bukan hanya mengajar, tapi juga termasuk tadi ya research dan sebagainya. Dan memang di dunia akademik sendiri, bukan hanya di antara student ya, tapi di antara staf akademik pun masih banyak yang relatively kurang yakin dengan pendekatan yang diambil mengenai bagaimana sih memformulasikan problem statement dan rationale of the study. Terutama kan kita wajib untuk mendapatkan research grant ya. Research grant itu bantuan dana penelitian dari pemerintah. Jadi kita harus mampu memformulasikan problem statement dengan baik. Nah, nanti kita coba diskusikan lebih detail ya, bagaimana sih cara formulasinya. Jadi intinya ada 3 agenda yang ingin saya angkat hari ini, yaitu what is research, and then what is problem statement and rationale of the study. Ini biasanya suka ditukar balik ya, maksudnya suka di intertwine, but this is not something that is happening in Indonesia. Di mana-mana selalu orang intertwine, asumsinya di intertwine bahwa problem statement and rationale of study itu bisa ditulis dengan bentuk yang sama, tapi nanti kita coba lihat ya, betulkah ini sama, dan juga how to formulate problem statement and rationale of the study. Okay, so these are the main agenda that I have for today. Sekarang kita masuk dulu ke what is research dulu ya. Cuma sebelum saya masuk ke topiknya lebih detail, kalau boleh minta teman-teman untuk masuk ke menti.com dan juga gunakan kode ini ya, 6107845. Appreciate if you can put in your answer. Okay, so coba tolong dimasukkan, tolong dijawab. Ada 3 pertanyaan. Coba saya rubah ya, nanti sebentar. Let's see whether I can get to the other one. Sebentar ya. Udah ada yang bisa masuk ke dalam menti.com? So that I can change this. Oke, udah ada yang bisa masuk?
Iya, udah bisa.
Oke. Volumenya kurang kuat ya? Kalau sekarang? Oke. Kalau sekarang jelas?
Alhamdulillah.
Jelas, Bu.
Oke, alhamdulillah. Oke. Jadi mohon kalau boleh masuk ke menti.com. Dan mohon dijawab, ada 3 pertanyaan. Coba saya rubah sebentar ya. Sebentar ya. Okay, so I'll put it as a self-paced. Okay. Ada 6 orang sejauh ini. Ada lagi. Research itu apa sih? Just use your own language. Nggak usah harus definisi dari Google ya. What do you understand about research? Apa sih penelitian itu? Meneliti itu apa sih? Gitu. Just put in your own language. Okay. Okay, proses pemikiran kreatif. Okay. Alright. Okay. Creating solutions, that's interesting. Okay. Okay. Oke, yang sudah ini mungkin bisa lihat ke pertanyaan selanjutnya ya, sambil yang mengisi ini mungkin yang sudah mengisi ini boleh lihat pertanyaan selanjutnya. Pertanyaan selanjutnya tentang what is problem statement? Okay, so and then the last one is okay, so let me just hide the result for the last one. Okay, so what is problem statement? And then the last one is whether problem statement is the same as rationale of study. Okay, so mungkin kalau boleh diisi dulu supaya kita bisa kelihatan ya nanti arah diskusinya kemana supaya lebih konstruktif juga. Okay, so we have 9 so far, we have 30. Okay, so let me just go through this. Okay, so cari teori, right? Okay. Okay. Interesting. All right. Okay, so there's a lot of keywords here. Let me just pull out my whiteboard. Okay, so tadi keyword yang banyak muncul solusi. Penelitian adalah upaya mencari solusi. Okay, what else tadi? Ada data, ada teori, okay. Harus yang sesuatu yang baru, okay. Systematic, data, systematic, novel itu baru ya tadi ya, okay. So I'm trying to find the keywords that you have understood. Okay, so ada beberapa keywords ini, I think it's close to you, but let's see whether it is this complicated. So, okay. Creating solution, discovering new. Okay, so that's novel, novelty. Okay, so challenging with facts. Challenge. Assumption. With facts. Okay. Right, so tadi ini untuk yang research ya, ini keyword untuk research. This is how you understood, which is good. No matter how long the sentence is, I think these are the main keywords. Let's have a look. What have you understood about problem statement? Okay, so okay, masalah ingin diteliti, alright. Permasalahan yang ingin diangkat, okay. Okay, so semuanya kayaknya sama ya. Problem statement adalah masalah yang ingin diteliti. Okay, okay, right. Interesting. Deskripsi dari masalah, gambaran jelas tentang masalah. Okay. Alright, so this is something new. fill the gap. So not so much of a problem, but how you can actually fill the gaps. That's interesting. Okay. All right. Okay. Interesting. Okay. So problem statement. Di sini problem statement. Maaf ya kalau tulisannya agak-agak ajaib. So the keyword is issues that will be researched. Okay. Okay, and then fill the gap in the knowledge. Okay, right. So that are the common theme, the common keywords that I can observe. Right. So next is okay. Is problem statement is the same as rationale of the study? Okay, interesting. Wow. Okay. Right. Oke, so tadi ada 42 orang, mungkin kita tunggu dulu ya sampai 42 orang, 44 orang. Okay, so let's just wait a bit until we get 44. So what do you think? Is problem statement the same as rationale of the study? Okay, some say yes, some say no. Let's see whether it is the same or different. Okay, just a bit more. Okay. Sembilan orang lagi? Nggak usah, nggak usah bertapa dulu ya, langsung aja. It's okay. Okay, so anyone else? Just want to see at least if you can reach 40. Okay. Right. Okay, nice. Right. So almost 40. Okay. Okay. Last one. Okay, yang last one kayak takut-takut ya. Okay, it's okay. So we have around 69% against 31. So majority is actually saying yes, it is the same, but we do have 31% says it is not. Okay, so let's get into that kind of discussions later on, but let's have a look what comes next. Okay, so thank you so much.
Prof, tidak ada suara.
Okay, all right. Okay, so let's have a look. Sorry. But anyway, thank you. So I think we've got all the feedbacks, around 44 just now. So I think we have enough sample. We have enough responses. So that will be the base of our discussions later. But again, thank you. Okay. So tadi discussions, feedback about what is research. So a few keywords that emerged was that it has to be novel, it has to be solution oriented, it has to be systematic, it has to be it could be challenging assumptions with facts. So tadi ada beberapa poin ya, ada beberapa perspektif, ada beberapa cara melihat apa itu research. But when you think about it, you have been doing research all your life. be that for something that you think it is a research work or something that you think it is just things that you have to do. Like for example, di university kan adik-adik harus memilih program, ya harus memilih jurusan apa. That is in a way you actually doing research, right? So before we get into what is research per se, I think what is important is that you should understand the thinking process, how you actually do the thing, how do you actually define whether it is something that you really have to put effort on or it's just something that comes naturally. Okay, so as simple as this, as simple as deciding a program, right? So adik-adik ketika memilih jurusan, sekarang ada di jurusan, ini semua ada di jurusan yang sama ya Dr. Muharman ya? Atau ada di lain-lain jurusan? Ini semua adik-adik dari jurusan yang sama atau?
Sepertinya sama semua.
Sama semua ya?
Ya.
Okay. So when you come to this program, ketika adik-adik memilih jurusan ini, what is the thinking process that happens? Okay, so can anyone just unmute? I think it would be nice if we have some interactions. So, apa sih ketika adik-adik memilih jurusan ini, apa yang adik-adik lihat sebagai the basis, the reason why you choose this? Anyone?
Boleh. Bu Mira.
Yep.
Ya, alasan kenapa milih program ini, ya karena selinier sama jurusan saya yang sebelumnya. Itu yang pertama. Yang kedua, juga karena pengen melanjutkan karir di bidang akademik, yakni jadi dosen. Gitu.
Oh, I see. Okay. Sekarang lagi buat program apa?
Magister.
Magister di jurusan
Sistem Telkom University.
I see. Okay. Dulu jurusan S1-nya ini juga
Sama.
Information System.
Information System juga.
I see. Okay, nice. Alright. Okay, thank you. So salah satu tadi jurusannya apa? Alasan panggilnya apa nih?
Adli.
Pak Hadi. Pak Adli.
Adli.
Oh, Adli aja. Oke. Salah satu alasan Adli pilih jurusan ini karena ini linear dengan jurusan sebelumnya. But this is your decisions, right? Being linear is your decision. But there is a thinking process, kan? Ada thinking process, ada cara berpikirnya sebelum melihat bahwa linear itu penting. And one of your statement just now, you want to be an academician, right? You want to be academician. So you think that linear will help to actually achieve your role, that your intention to be an academician. But being linear itself is a decision. Sebetulnya yang mungkin Adli belum maksudnya tadi belum it's not really articulated is how you think that being linear is important. Okay, so sebetulnya ada proses di sini kan yang pasti yang terjadi sebelumnya adalah apakah linear itu penting? Apakah menjadi academician itu sesuatu yang is a reasonable career? Apakah dengan linear ini nanti justru membantu untuk mengembangkan peran di academician? So we actually have those kind of options actually, right? So those thinking process, the fact that we actually have seen this as a decisions actually come up from a series of our problem definitions. But mungkin karena kita nggak lihat ini sebagai masalah yang kompleks gitu ya, atau mungkin karena kita udah dari jauh-jauh hari kita udah berpikir bahwa ini adalah keputusan yang terbaik. Jadi proses berpikir yang panjang itu kita nggak akumulasi gitu. Itu kita nggak pikir bahwa itu adalah suatu proses research. But I'm very sure in a way what you have done is actually you go through some kind of facts gathering, right? You actually try to find out whether being academicians is what you really want to be, and whether information system is something that you really want to do. And just because it is linear with your undergraduate doesn't mean that this is what makes you happy and things like that. And so you have gone through that. Correct me if I'm wrong. Betul kan?
Yes.
Okay, so there you go. So this is what we want to manifest in research. This is what we want to highlight in research. We want to make sure that thinking process, we use the same thinking process for research. Okay, so we want to make sure that the same thinking process is also applied on how we search for solutions for a problem which may not be directly related to us. Oke, so kadang-kadang kan penelitian research kan kayak gitu ya. Kadang-kadang penelitian kan kayak gitu ya. Well, it doesn't relate to you directly, but you think that it is important, so you research on it. Okay, so I think this we have to be aware of that. We have to be aware that it is about thinking process. It's not so much about the decisions per se at the end, but how you achieve that, how you achieve the goals. Okay, so I think we want to highlight on that process. So we encountered research in our daily life. So we are doing this by hook or crook. You have been doing this. So kalau ada orang yang bilang dari S1 saya coursework, S2 saya coursework, saya nggak pernah ada pengalaman penelitian. Mungkin Dr. Muharman ingat ya, dulu saya kalau dengan semua student itu biasanya yang pertama saya drill adalah itu ya. It's not about how you do things, but what is the thinking process behind it. I think that is more important rather than, okay, so I can achieve 3 chapters in 3 months, 3 chapters in 1 year. It doesn't really matter how many chapters you can achieve. Doesn't really matter how long you're going to finish the program. What matters is that whether by the end of your program, you actually can demonstrate the skills as a researcher, as the skills as an academician. So I think that is what mattered the most for me. I'm not sure for others, but that is what matters the most for me, because we have been doing that in our side or in many steps of our lives. We have been doing research consciously or unconsciously. So if I can put it in simple form, so what is research? We assess the information with which we collected. Research itu adalah about how you actually process on information that you have collected, the form and opinion as to the validity and relevance of the research. Jadi kita kumpulkan data. Tadi kan saya menentukan program. Kita kumpulkan data. Apa sih sebetulnya program-program yang cukup menarik saat ini? And then your problem statement is, or your main problems is, I have to pick the right programs for me, right? So that is your problem statement, because you would want to make sure that you are competitive when you have completed the programs. You have to make sure that you are somehow in the demand list that people actually sought for your skills, right? That's the whole problem statement, as well as how competitive it will be when you graduated later on. So you have to have that value add to the society or to the industry. So that is the problem statement. But then when we are looking at the facts, when we are looking at the information, so we collected them, we try to separate. Okay, we try to separate. These are relevant, these are not relevant, this is important, this is not important, this is very important, this is not so important. So we actually process that. Right? And it is not necessarily, it has to be in the form of data from the survey per se, but it would be nice if we have those kind of data. In some cases, we actually collected the information which may not be intended to collect. Okay, so this process we have to be aware of, that research is all about collecting data, but what about those informations that we don't intend to collect? Will that be part of our thinking process as well? Do we have to consider that? In other words, that I think that's how I should put it. Do we have to consider those data that we don't intend to collect, but that actually comes to our stand, and then it actually somehow nudge our thinking that it should be considered? Okay, and so these are based on a couple of things. Okay, so the first one is it okay? Sorry, Muharman, nggak apa-apa ya kalau tiba-tiba saya tiba-tiba jadi bilingual gini, nggak apa-apa ya, teman-teman, nggak apa-apa ya?
Aman, Bu.
Yeah, alright. Okay, so but if it's kalau misalnya terlalu cepat, tolong just feel free to stop and unmute ya. I think I would be I would prefer that we have some kind of interactions rather than you only listens and then put a shield behind the pictures, behind the videos. Okay, so I really hope that you can just unmute. Feel free, mau pakai bahasa Indonesia boleh, pakai bahasa Inggris boleh, pakai bahasa Sunda juga saya ngerti. Asal jangan pakai bahasa yang lain di antara tiga itu, selain dari tiga itu aja kayaknya. Okay, all right. Okay, so these are the considerations that we have to think when we come to our conclusions. The first one is what we understand is the questions or problem to be answered, how the findings are presented, and then why the research was conducted, what we know about who conducted the research, what other people think about the information, how the research findings related to us, or we may not relate to us at all, and so on. Okay, so ada satu website, nanti I'll share this slide, so feel free to have a look on the website. It's kind of interesting. So I've gone through a couple of references. I try to pick the one that actually can put in simple terms. So many books have been very, I don't know, very sophisticated, I think, but I'll try to pick the resources that everyone can relate to. So I picked this one. Feel free to have a look later on. And the next one is, what is problem statement then? Okay, so just now I think I've got a feeling that everyone kind of agreed that when it comes to problem statement, it is about issues that will be research on, something that we are interested to get to know more on, or by filling the gap in the knowledge. I think filling the gap in the knowledge is somehow kind of sophisticated, but let's just put it. Okay, so that is the spirit. That is the spirit. By all means, have that. It would be nice. It would be nice if you already can relate to it. But filling the gap in the knowledge, I think for some people still too abstract. Okay, but I think the first one would be more relatable. Okay, so by all means, if you feel that you can do this, amazing. If you have that conscious level that you know how to fill the gap in the knowledge, that would be wonderful. All right. Okay, so one of the jadi satu sub questions, yeah, why do you need to formulate them carefully? Okay, so I think we're going to talk about this: what is problem statement and what is rationale of study, and why do we need to formulate these two carefully? Right. Problem statement by definitions, when we are talking about problem statement, is actually we are talking about the research problem, right? So a research problem is a statement about an area of concern. Okay, so let me just highlight this a bit. So it's about area of concern, conditions to be improved. So there are many perspectives you can take on. Okay, so do you want to address the area of concern based on what needs to be improved, or difficulties to be eliminated, troubling questions that exist in scholarly literature? So, for example, if I want to talk about the impact of COVID on impact dari COVID untuk household income. Okay, so and how that affects the children education. What is the impact of COVID? So in other words, the impact on COVID on household income as well as the students' education. So for example, when we are talking like that, when we are discussing like that, not necessarily that you have to be sacked. You don't have, jadi kalau ketika kita bicara kayak gitu, ketika kita bicara soal problem kayak gitu, not necessarily that you have to be dipecat dari pekerjaan dulu kan. Just because you want to research on orang-orang yang kehilangan pekerjaan, not necessarily you have to be one of the sample, right? So it means that it may not be related to your personally, but you can see it is something of the difficulties which needs to be eliminated, which is a concern that needs to be addressed. Okay, so we can also find in the literature, and adik-adik juga bisa lihat di literatur bahwa ketika kehilangan pekerjaan itu ada nggak sih impactnya terhadap pendidikan anak-anak? Alright, so we have to highlight these are the problems that kind of bothers us, kind of things that we have to address. But you have to looking at it not only from what we feel is bothering, but we also need to have a look on the literature. So this is what is different. Okay, this is ini bedanya antara the research that we have on daily life. Okay, so the research that we have here and the research that we have in academic. Okay, in problem statement that we are trying to address in academic manner. Why? Because we are trying to see it from, this is happening today, what happened yesterday from previous research. So you kind of triangulate, you kind of see things from other people's eyes as well, and those eyes have proven things in their perspective, in their settings, with their facts and justifications. All right, so I think we have to looking at it from that perspective, that when we are articulating a problem statement, you have to sort of highlight things that has been done in the past in a way, okay? And in some social science disciplines, the research problem is typically posed in the form of questions. A research problem does not state how to do something, but it offers a vague or broad propositions or presents a value question. So di dalam social research, it's even more interesting. I think I found it more interesting, which is different from any other kind of research. In social science, we can actually pose the questions in the form pose the inquiries in the form of questions, and the questions not necessarily have to highlight how you do things. Like for example tadi ya, problem statementnya, permasalahan ketika COVID, banyak sekali masyarakat yang kehilangan pekerjaan sehingga berdampak pada pendapatan rumah tangga pastinya, dan juga karena banyak sekarang karena banyaknya sekolah memilih untuk online, setidaknya itu berdampak juga pada bagaimana orang tua mensupport tadi ya cost for accessing the educations using the online platform. So those are kind of things that probably you can put it into problems, and then what we have to do, what we have. So that is just the problems, but it doesn't show how to do things. Okay, it doesn't show how will you do. How will you solve that? Because there will be another parts that will actually explain that, right? So what do we have to emphasize then on a problem statement? Problem statement itu harusnya seperti apa? The first thing that you can start with, okay, so when you want to articulate a problem statement, the first thing that you need to ask yourself is, can you survive the so what questions? Okay, so for example, tadi ya, kembali lagi ke permasalahan COVID, kehilangan pekerjaan, dan pendidikan anak. So what? Okay, so what if people are losing the job and then the household income is reducing? So what? And how if it affects the children education? So what? So you have to able to articulate that. You have to able to define that, justify that. Okay, so later on we're going to see how do we answer this so what? Where do we have to define the problem statement? Okay, so but keep in mind, let me just put this, and if you can put this as screenshot in your mentally, okay, so mentally just put a screenshot that we're going to put that as a benchmark of a good problem statement, right? So let's have a look on the purpose first. Tujuannya untuk problem statement itu apa? Satu, tujuan problem statement adalah to introduce the reader to the importance of the topic being studied. Okay, so you want to highlight that this is important, this is a critical issue, and you want to research on this. And the reader is oriented to the significance of the study and the research questions or hypothesis to follow. All right, so the purpose is problem statement. Kita kenalkan dulu kenapa sih topik ini, not so much of why, but ini penting as what. Okay, so for example, just now survivable income in the COVID is very critical, and it has affected the students' the children education quality, and it surely will affect the future of educations in general. Okay, so that could be one of the things that you can highlight as a problem statement, and then place the problem statement into particular context. So just now I put the context that it is COVID. Okay, so during the pandemic, and then you need to highlight the parameters. What is to be investigated? Apa sih yang mau diteliti? All right, and then provides the framework for reporting the result. Okay, so what would you deliver at the end? What would you deliver at the end? So after you finish research, so what? Okay, so you perhaps you can come up with a framework, or you can actually come up with potential policy or potential model that people or government can actually adopt to assist those people who are actually affected by the pandemic in terms of household income and so on. So this could be, you might give a hint, although it may not be something that you anticipate the result, but you sort of give a hint. This could be things that I will, or this is what I want to achieve, at least in the end, right? And what would make, okay, so I think I sort of, okay, please excuse, I think I accidentally copy paste that again, but anyway, let's have a look on rationale of study. Okay, so tadi udah ada problem statement, so I hope by now you would be able to see problem statement. Yes, it is about what is the research that you want, what is the topics that you want to research on, but beyond that, beyond just highlighting, I want to study about the household income. Household income in what about household income? So you have to be more articulate, you have to be more specific, you should be able to think about the issues that you want to address. What's the problem with household income? Ingin meneliti tentang pendapatan rumah tangga, ya. So what? Pendapatan rumah tangga tentang apa? Nah, you have to be more specific, you have to be more articulate, konteksnya apa, and then why is it a problem that you want to research on, which we're going to discuss about rationale of study, right? So rationale of study is when you are asked to give the reasoning or justifications for an actions or a choice you make. Out of so many problems in this world, okay, ada banyak masalah di dunia, and then you decide that you're going to study on the household income affected by COVID and how it affects the children educations. Why? Okay, so you will need to justify, and that is when the rationale of study comes in. So for those of you just now who about 69%, unfortunately, the answer is incorrect. Rationale of study and problem statement is different. Okay, it is not the same. Problem statement is when you highlight the issues that you need, or when you highlight the issues that you, the area of your concerns, things to be improved, problems to be solved. Yes, but rational study, you are not expected to say the same thing. You are expected to justify why you want to do that in the first place. So there is a focus on why in the rationale, why you choose to do something, study or focus on something. It is a set of statements of purpose and significance, and often addresses the gap or the need. Okay, so if I can put it this way, problem statement, you nudge the reader. Okay, so you give a highlight. This is the problem. You should be aware this is the problem. All right, and then on rationale of study, you said, why is this a problem? Okay, so why this needs to be focused on? Why do we need to give attention on this? Okay, so things like that, right? So now, any questions before I move on? Ada pertanyaan? Sorry. Sometimes if I get too excited, this is what happens. So feel free. Ada pertanyaan adik-adik? Is it clear so far?
Dari malam.
Yeah, go ahead.
Saya Bu.
Ya, silakan.
Bu Mira, bahasa Indonesia ya.
Boleh.
Tadi, ya, tadi kan saya Arif Azhar sebagai lecturer juga di sini. Tadi untuk ada namanya problem statement dengan rational study. Kalau dilihat dari rational study itu ada sesuatu yang finding the gap knowledge yang berhubungan dengan akademik ya, yang kita geluti seperti itu ya. Apakah demikian Ibu ya?
Iya, the whole thing dari awal, dari problem statement juga harus problem statement yang academically sound. For example, tadi ya, problem statement juga harus ada bobot akademiknya. Artinya kalau misalnya meneliti kenapa murid, misalnya meneliti kenapa jam belajar murid itu berpengaruh pada performance. I think in a way udah banyak studinya, walaupun ini konteksnya tentang akademik, tapi bobot akademiknya kayaknya not so much of something that you can survive the so what kan, karena orang udah punya persepsi sendiri ketika kita fokus pada belajar, performanya akan lebih baik misalnya gitu ya. Jadi walaupun ini tentang dunia akademik, tapi bobot akademiknya kayaknya kurang meyakinkan. It doesn't really convince people of the so what-nya. So mungkin harus diasah lagi problemnya, misalnya performance of the hours of study impact on students proficiency or competency in programming, and then we pick a couple of sample. Does learning more means knowing more? Does knowing more means you are able to solve more? So things like that. Jadi you have to really hit why in the problemnya itu. You really have to hit sort of give a signal it is important academically. Bukan karena harus settingnya di akademik, tapi it has to be academically sound. Does it make sense?
Iya, Bu.
Ya.
Jadi kalau misalkan rational study itu yang berhubungan dengan namanya topik penelitian, kalau yang bagaimana tadi kan ada juga namanya academic sound-nya juga harus ada pada saat kita membuat problem statement ya Bu ya. Jadi kalau di dalam rational study itu topik penelitian itu harus sesuai dengan kalau saya keahlian dosennya itu misalkan interpretasi arsitektur kan gitu ya. Nah, topik rational study itu apakah nanti digeret dengan knowledge yang berkembang saat ini dengan problem statement yang ada di dunia nyata. Jadi pada saat kita membuat suatu ini yang saya hadapin anak-anak ya pada saat saya sebagai pembimbing, nah, ini konfirmasi ya Prof ya. Pada saat saya membuat ini masalah, ini bukan masalah penelitian. Ini adalah masalah dunia nyata. Jadi tidak ada kontribusinya di dalam di dalam keilmuan kita gitu. Seperti itu Bu. Jadi antara rasional tadi karena harus ada namanya kontribusi penelitian walaupun S1 ya gitu ya. Walaupun S1 jadi ada namanya itu adalah bukan masalah kan gitu. Kalau itu adalah masalahmu, masalah dunia, tetapi yang hubungan dengan rational study-nya itu adalah bagaimana kita punya yang sudah dibekali selama 3 tahun yang dengan konteksnya adalah akademik sound-nya tadi itu harus ada. Apakah seperti itu Bu? Ya Prof.
Kayaknya it's a bit kayaknya agak abstrak buat saya untuk saya paham concern-nya ya, bahwa kadang-kadang ada banyak sekali topik yang diajukan agak kurang meyakinkan kalau ini bisa jadi academically bisa jadi penelitian akademik gitu ya maksudnya ya.
Iya betul demikian.
Oke. Saya sering lihat juga kayak gitu ya, bukan hanya di level student, di level academician juga banyak yang kayak gitu, karena saya harus jadi evaluator buat grant kan, jadi banyak at national level mau studi kayak gini kenapa gitu kan, dan nggak dijelaskan kenapa. Artinya memang ini juga mungkin salah satu yang mungkin adik-adik juga harus paham ya. Cara berpikir secara akademik itu nanti kan kita harus tadi prosesnya bahwa bukan hanya ada masalah, tapi kira-kira masalah seperti ini mungkin lebih baik kalau misalnya justru sebelum mengajukan penelitian, sebelum memilih topik, adik-adik juga sudah membuat, kalau saya biasanya sarankan desk research gitu ya. I'm not sure whether you're familiar with this desk research. Just put in your keywords gitu ya, buat kalau sekarang dengan dulu Dr. Muharman udah sangat ketika ketemu saya udah sangat matang, akhirnya kita cuma debat doang gitu. Tapi banyak juga yang datang yang masih belum tahu mau ngerjain apa. Nah, biasanya saya minta mereka desk research gitu. Desk research itu list down keywordnya apa sih tentang masalah yang ingin diteliti. Jangan dulu formulat, jangan dulu bikin kalimat. Keywordnya aja dulu. Keywordnya apa? Misalnya income, COVID, lost job, education, ditulis aja, dikumpulin dulu. Jadi saya minta buat mind map. Nah, setelah desk research, lihat keyword itu, cari di as simple as Google Scholar, ada nggak yang pakai dengan keyword yang sama? Is it something that is viable nggak? Topik ini kira-kira mengena nggak? Nanti bisa kebaca tuh. Oh, ternyata keyword-keyword ini mengarahnya ke arah sini permasalahannya. Jadi mungkin kalaupun nanti kita nggak bisa selesaikan masalahnya, minimal kita bisa ada kontribusi bahwa di konteks kita ini temuannya. Jadi lebih ke arah, mungkin adik-adik bisa dilatih ke arah sana ya, bisa lihat bahwa jangan langsung put a problem, don't jump directly to a statement before you understand the problem. So I think I should put it that way. You should understand the problem first. And how would you understand the problem? You have a look whether people understand the problem in the same way as you. Orang lain mengerti problem itu sama nggak dengan adik-adik mengerti permasalahan ini? Karena kalau misalnya if people doesn't see it as a problem and you feel it as a problem, the fact that you feel it as a problem is not a justification. It is a researchable. It is something that is viable for research. Gitu ya. I think I should put it that way. You should understand the problem first. Before you understand the problem, don't expect people to buy your problem as something that is research worth researching on. Is it clear, Pak?
Iya, Bu, clear,
Betul,
jelas.
ya?
Terima kasih.
Okay, alhamdulillah, terima kasih. Okay, so I think it will be nice. It will be more clearer once I show you an example. Right. So let's have a look on how. Yeah, I think it will be nice if we just have a look on how we formulate this, so we can see it in actions. But before that, I just want to brief you. This is one of the things that is very interesting. A model proposed in one of the websites belongs to Melbourne University on how they train the students to think in research kind of mode, the research thinking, academic research thinking. So one of the things that they actually train the students is to have this kind of model, problem, solutions, rational. Okay, so the whole model is, I mean, like the rationale of the model is to get the students able to justify the choice. Okay, so a more specific or focused way of thinking about rational is how we can overtly, okay, so we can overtly show we are justifying our choice. So kita bisa yakin gitu ya, yakin kita bisa menjustifikasi kenapa sih kita meneliti soal topik tadi. One way of doing this is to consider the problem or the issue. Okay, so when you want to think about rational, think about the problem first. Okay, so again, understanding the problem. Okay, so don't overstate the problem without understanding it first. So understand the problem first, or issue requiring attentions, the solutions, and then the rational. So rational itu terakhir. Jadi kita bukan dulu mencari kenapa ya saya meneliti kayak gitu. Itu nggak dari. That is not the first thing that you want to do. You want to start with understanding the problem first. Okay, let me give you an example. So this is one of the example that is kind of interesting. A diagnostic assessment determined that the students required more attention to addition and subtractions of mix of fractions. So di sini dijelaskan bahwa diagnostic assessment menentukan menjelaskan bahwa ini penting buat student gitu ya, untuk untuk pelajar untuk required more attention, harus memiliki perhatian lebih pada kemampuan untuk menambahkan dan penambahan dan pengurangan dalam bentuk fraction, pecahan, right? So this activity intends to address this problem by having a children engage with the task with the blocks before it done with figures. Okay, so this is the problem statement. Permasalahannya adalah gitu ya. Permasalahannya sekarang student mungkin ini karena snapshot dari bagian tesisnya, mungkin problem statement lebih panjangnya mungkin ada ya, tapi ini bagian yang dipotongnya adalah ini problem statementnya, bahwa student itu penting untuk memiliki kemampuan penambahan dan pengurangan dalam bentuk pecahan, dan tujuan ini ya, solutionnya adalah this activity intends to address this problem by having the children engage with the task with the blocks before it done with figures. Jadi student di pelajar-pelajar ini akan dilatih dengan menggunakan blok gitu ya, misalnya 2/3, jadi menggunakan blok 2 dari dengan pecahan berbentuk blok ini ya, yang physical, right, physical blocks. And then the reason I choose this is the rationale. The reason I choose to do this because students have higher comprehension levels when presented with visual or tangible representations of abstract problem. Ngajarin misalnya 2/3. Well, this is, I think all of us can relate to this, right? Where is my? Oops. Okay, so for example, 2/3 tambah 3/3, for example, which is we know the answer, but for a kids to actually visualize this, 2 out of 3, and it is just number, it's very abstract. The moment you use blocks, that we have 3 blocks, and 2/3 means that you only have 2 pieces out of the 3 pieces that you're supposed to have, that would give them a better understanding what 2/3 means, what 3/3 means. All right. So in this case, you highlight the problems. This is the solutions on how you want to address that problem. See whether it is proven. See whether by using blocks it really helps. But because of you believe it is, then you provide the reasons. Okay. So you believe, you choose to do this because you know by having this kind of activities, it will improve the comprehension level. So you justify why. So what? This is what, this is how, yeah, kind of like not the detail how, because the detail how would be in your research methodology, and this is why. Okay, so beda ya cara berpikirnya kalau misalnya kita berpikir bahwa problem statement dengan what's that, rational of study itu sama. Kalau kita berpikir sama, then that is when most of the research are not well justified. Why? Because you are giving problems, but then, so what? And you are not able to answer it because you haven't think it is something that needs to be justified. Every research needs to be justified. Every research is a cost if you are not able to do it right. Okay, cost to the decision making, cost to the society, cost to the future, because by right, if you do it right, you would be able to find the solution. So we have to think in this perspective. The problems needs to have a justifications, and that justifications is the rationale. Okay, so problems, solutions, rational. I think if you see it in this way, you would be able to articulate it in much better way. These are some of the languages that you can actually use to justify how important your research is. For example, this was important because, okay, so this meant that I think that usually most of the research now, we don't use the first person, right? We actually use the third person. So this research, by doing this research, it means, okay, so this research will enable the researcher to things like that. You put in the third person. So, but this is how the words that we play when we are justifying our research in the rationale of the study, which you don't have this in problem statement. You don't have this in solutions. We put it a bit further away. Once we have highlight the problems, then you justify why it is something that is worth research on. Okay. So I think that will be all. Anything that I can sort of elaborate before I move on? But I think that will be that. Those are the things that I have. So maybe we can jump into question and answer. And if you want to show me your just a very rough ideas on what is the problem statement, perhaps I can help to improve if you don't mind sharing with the public. Otherwise, we can have a discussions later on. Okay.
Ya, Prof, saya ada sedikit pertanyaan, Prof.
Sure.
become somehow personal because when I understand this, but somehow the society or the community understand differently. Is it really equivalent when we talk about problem statement or problem formulation? I guess it's another term that we use in academical. Is it really equivalent to the research question? Because when I see many proposal in Indonesia, they put it question, let's say like what, why, how, in the rumusan masalah or problem formulation. Let's say we agree to use this kind of term. Apakah memang sama atau equivalent ketika kita mengatakan rumusan masalah itu adalah pertanyaan masalah? Itu yang pertama. Terus mungkin yang kedua, ketika kita memutuskan untuk merumuskan masalah, apakah yang pertama harus kita lakukan? Apakah memang kita mulai dengan objektif tujuan kita atau pertanyaan masalah gitu? Karena saya lihat secara sistematikal di chapter 1 ketika kita menyusun, objektif dan question itu beradanya setelah problem statement atau setelah rumusan masalah. Tapi secara praktek saya lihatnya kayaknya lebih mudah itu duluan gitu. Kemudian baru kita memutuskan problem statement. Dan batasannya sampai mana nih problem statement? Apakah kita sudah harus ada solusinya atau assumption of solution gitu? Sudah ada juga gambaran what kind of method that proper to use in this kind of research? Atau bagaimana, Prof? Mungkin bisa give us some light to this kind of issue.
Okay, all right, thank you. Okay, so formulations of problem, biasanya kita I think the terms are a bit different. Biasanya kalau di thesis luar biasanya it's a background of the problem. And then you have problem statement. So background of the problem, you highlight all, it's very extensive kind of details, highlighting, for example, if you want to talk about the background of the problems of, let me just use one of my research, so it's easier for me to explain. So one of my research was about how the parents information seeking, bagaimana cara orang tua mencari informasi itu untuk health information seeking berpengaruh pada bagaimana mereka mencari informasi tentang kesehatan untuk anak-anak mereka dan bagaimana itu berpengaruh pada kita ada namanya infodemiology. Okay, so bagaimana proses mencari informasi untuk kesehatan diri dan juga ke keluarga. So when I talk about that, one of the things that I put in the background of research is there has been a lot of information in the internet. Some may not be accurate, some may not be credible, but people consume it anyway. So it's very easy for people to get misinformed. And then when it comes to health, it's even more disastrous because there's a lot of money that actually have been poured into health sectors. And there's a lot of support from the government giving away some of the medications for free, but the parents are not administering. Orang tua nggak kasih obat-obat itu pada anaknya. They took it from the clinics, but they don't administer to the kids because of perhaps they read in the internet that certain medications is not appropriate or things like that. So that gives me a lot of points. Okay, so these are this is a big issues. I can look at it from the financial perspective. I can look at it from what else? The health sector's perspective, the public health perspective, but then I move to my problem statement. This is what I want to research on. I'm not going to look at it from the budget perspective, how it affects the government. No, I'm not going to look at it that perspective, but I'm going to look at it from how it affects the children. So the problem statement even more narrowed. Okay, so background of the problem is very broad, but you scope down into your problem statement. This is the perspective that I want to solve. This is the problem that I want to solve in my research. So it will be hard if we move from the objectives. I think it will be harder if we move from the objectives per se. Why? Because the objectives, you can only articulate what is your missions after you understand the problem, right? After you understand what is happening and where do you heading, then only you can say, this is my problem. This is the problem that I want to focus on. So this is my objectives. So I think that would be a lot more logical rather than objectives comes first. And whether the objectives should come first before research questions, or research questions should come first before objectives. For me, it's kind of like a chicken and egg problems. I don't really want to go into that debate. I know some people really enjoyed the debate, but I don't really enjoy it. So I don't think that it is very critical for us to know which one should come first, as long as you articulate it well. In your case, I think it was objectives and research questions first, right, Dr. Muhammad? And some other students actually use the other way around. I don't really mind, and they graduated already, so I don't really mind. So it doesn't really, it's not really an issue, but what is important is to have that kind of mindset that you have to be really, you have to have a good grasp on your problems, understanding of the problems. Okay, so looking at it from a micro perspective and narrow it down, if you can link that macro to the focus of your research, then you understand it well. Yang jadi masalah sekarang, banyaknya penelitian, you focus on the problem, but you cannot see how that problems affect the big picture. Okay, so permasalahan tadi contohnya ya, the COVID hilang pekerjaan. So what does you cannot stop at that. So you should have reason, you should have understanding. By losing job, what would you want to know more? Okay, there are many ways, because it affects many sides of life. It affects the family resilience, it affects the education of the children, it affects many folds of life. So which one you want to focus on? So I think you have to be able to go from the small part to the big pictures, or from the big pictures to the narrow points that you want to focus on. But that narrow is something that you know you can contribute on. Again, back to the first point, filling the gap. There you go. So that filling the gap doesn't need that you want to research everything. Remember, we are not solving the entire world's problem. We want to solve one part of the problems that perhaps in the big picture we are completing the puzzle. So I think that should be the kind of mindset, I think, rather than which should come first. I'm not sure. Does it answer your question, Dr. Harman?
Okay. Is it okay if we say problem statement itu seperti kesimpulan awal mungkin?
Not really, not really. It shouldn't be, and it shouldn't be a conclusions. It should be, again, tadi yang saya sampaikan ya, bahwa permasalahan ini kompleks. Ketika kita bicara soal orang tua atau individu menggunakan internet untuk mencari informasi kesehatan, it affects so many part of life. It affects tadi ya, it affects the government budget allocations on public health. It affects education, because you really have to make sure that people knows how to assess information. It affects many sides. But in the context of okay, so I have to my brain run faster in my mouth, so I have to be careful now. But when you try to articulate that, this is the background of the problem. Health sectors is currently suffering because of a lot of information shared online is of lack of credibility, but people consume it, so they become misinformation. Okay, and it affects many, again, as I said, it affects many sides of life. But in your research, after you highlight, these are the budget that been allocated to the health sectors. These are the numbers of the cases where people are not administering. If you have that data at all, it would be nice, like how many people have not been administering the medications to the children and so on and so forth. If there's any newspaper highlights on that, you should be able to include that as well. So after you talk about big picture, so on the problem statement, you put clearly that neglecting the health sectors and allowing people to self-assess information without equipping them with the right skills to assess health information may be troublesome. It is the aim of this research to see how the individual, how the parents self, in my case, yeah, I still remember it, so that's why I can articulate it. it is the aim of this research to understand how the parents' ability to access informations would affect on the children well-being. Okay, so that is my problem statement and the solutions. So in that research, the rationale is the rationale, the justification why, because we believe because it as per highlighted in the previous sections, which is the problem, the background of the problems, an inability of the parents to access the information well, cases that there's a rampant cases of a lot of children were, for example, what was the term? Yeah? I think I put it as severe as the conditions getting more severe, the health conditions getting more severe, and then waste of government budget allocations. Okay, so I think those are the rationale. The rationale is the why because it affects the children health, and it affects the government budget allocations. May as well we actually use it for something else, okay, rather than allowing parents to self-diagnose the children. So that is my problem statement with the rationale. Okay, so I think problem statement is not so much of offering the solutions or the outcome yet, but you sort of highlight the issue and why you think that is important. One of the usually one of the things that I usually include in the why is that lack of attentions given. Okay, there's not many research has been focused on this. That would be one of your rationale as well. If you would want to include that, I think that should be okay. Yeah. Does it answer your questions?
So how about the research question? Is it okay if you put it in problem statement?
It shouldn't be. It shouldn't be, because you just make a stand. You tadi kan baru menentukan posisi that this is the problem. Then it would be well. I have to make it clear. You want to put it in the document. You want to make sure it provides structure, right? Harus ada strukturnya kan. Kalau misalnya dicampur semua, sometimes it hard for the reader to actually dichotomize, to actually see the sequence of your arguments. So I would suggest to actually put it as a separate subsections, and it doesn't harm to have an additional subsections, but it will be challenging for people to actually lump everything together. So I think it would be nice if you separate them. It doesn't mean that it has to be, but it would be nice just to help the readers to understand in sequence.
Okay, thank you, Prof.
Yep. All right.
Nah, mungkin cukup waktu ya bagi yang lain untuk bertanya, bahwa
sure.
bertanya cannot harm you ya.
Exactly. You should ask, because I might not be giving the information you need.
Kalau nggak ada yang mau bertanya, nanti saya terus yang bertanya nih, Prof.
Dari saya.
Okay, go ahead.
Izin Prof. Mira. Nah, saya ini kesehariannya bekerja di salah satu perbankan di Jawa Barat. Pengalaman saya itu akademisi, itu ada guru, dosen, atau mahasiswa dan siswa gitu. Ini saya belum kebayang kalau misalkan nanti saya ingin membuat riset gitu ya nantinya. Sedangkan saya itu nggak di ranah akademisi. Mungkin ada sarannya gitu, Prof. Mira, untuk ya beginner seperti kami ini gitu.
No, there's no beginner, I think, in research, because you are all expert. It's just that probably nggak ada beginner, tapi mungkin karena belum terdokumentasi aja mungkin ya, jadi kelihatannya seperti belum ada tracknya, padahal saya yakin semuanya tadi ya, we do that in our life. Okay, so a good exposure kalau mau mulai tentang penelitian, I think one of the things that I would recommend is to start reading how like from articles, bagaimana sih artikel itu especially yang related to your interest ya. Jangan baca artikel fokus pada bagaimana orang menulisnya, tapi cari topik yang Mas Rizky yang Mas Rizky suka, and then you have a look on, try to read the way they presented the research. So don't pick the topics that not related to you. Pick something that of your interest. Why? Because when you pick the topic that you have interest on, at least the barrier, halangan untuk memahami itu, karena tadi emotions is very important in learning, right? So kalau nggak connect istilahnya gitu ya, it's harder for you to be able to see what the researcher see in their research. So pick something that is relevant to you. You're from banking, is it?
Yes.
Okay, so tadi sektornya dari banking. Okay, so maybe you can pick something that is of your interest in the banking sectors. For example, like I think last 2 years I have one of the research with I supervise one of the economic students on the impact of what do you call that? It's not really it's Baitul Mal. Okay, so the impact of Baitul Mal on I think the focus was on how the zakat affects the growth of the Baitul Mal. So she started that, not because she was asked to do that, but because she has interest on that. So when she read the articles related to that, it's easier for her to understand. So I would suggest, even me, when I do research on the health informatics just now, it's easier for me because now I can relate. I have children. I am actually consuming information from online. So I can relate to myself what happened if I'm not doing it right. And let's have a look. What other parents think? So I think it will be easier. So read first, but read something that you are interested on, and pick the articles that have a good stand. Karena sekarang banyak sekali ya research, tapi they don't really do it carefully, and they just put it in the journals for the sake of getting citations. So I would encourage you pick the literatures that is of good quality. Okay, so you can start from that, and then you will be able to see, oh ternyata orang ini pakai masalah ini. Oh ternyata untuk masalah ini cara penyelesaiannya bisa dengan menggunakan kuantitatif, atau misalnya ada yang menggunakan mixed method. Ada yang misalnya menggunakan pure kualitatif. Kenapa ya kok bisa pure kualitatif bisa menyelesaikan itu? And then you will have a lot of questions. Once you have that many questions, then it will be a good. That is the skills that every researcher needs to have. You should be able to articulate questions. Okay, so all the best. Good luck. Does it answer your questions?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, all right. Thank you. All the best. Ada lagi?
Professor, can I ask the question?
Sure. Go ahead. Yes.
Okay. You said that earlier. Research. We have to understand how the research is affecting the bigger picture, right? Mm-hmm. And sometimes I realize that as a researcher, we don't really get how it's connected to our environment. Kayak gimana cara riset ini tuh berpengaruh ke bigger picture. Sometimes we don't get it. Is there any suggestion or any tips? Should we directly change the topic, or should we just spread the net wider? That's the question.
Okay. All right. Okay. So can you give me some kind of ideas in what way it's a bit the big picture is a bit out of reach? Can you give me an example?
Say that we already have the what, kita udah punya problemnya, tapi kita nggak bisa nangkap ini why-nya kenapa ya gitu, Prof.
All right. Okay. So the moment you are not really sure why you should research on that means that there are steps that you have missed, which is understanding the problems well. So when you are not sure why, means you yourself haven't been convinced that it is worth researching. And I have seen, and don't worry when you feel that. It is okay. It is natural. Okay, it is natural, because I think by the end of every PhD journey, we don't feel that we are smarter. We feel that we know less because so many things that we haven't learned, we haven't researched on before. So it is okay. So does it signals that you have to change the research question? Does it change that you have to change the problem statement? I don't think that you have to take an extreme U-turn. I think what it signals is just you need to know more about the problems. But if it's still just out of reach, yeah, maybe you don't have that sort of connections, or you don't have that motivations to use that as a base for your research. I would see it as one of the stage in research is what you're actually experiencing. But what comes after that means that if you have put in some kind of effort to actually try to understand, and still it doesn't make any sense, and still you are not convinced that it is worth researching, then I would suggest that maybe a U-turn is one of the viable options.
Okay, thank you so much, Professor.
All right, thank you.
Oh, Professor, can I ask a question?
Sure.
So my question was, sometimes we have the problem, and sometimes we have already the solution. The question is how we connect the reasoning that we have according to the answer that we have to the academic. I mean, how we can connect the dot between something that we can solve according to what we already done, and we want to make it as a research because this is interesting, but kind of somehow difficult to find the way to the academic.
All right. Okay. Interesting. That's kind of a common questions. I already have the problems, and I sort of know the solutions. Sort of know the answer of the questions, but is it academically enough? Is it academically sound? Satu yang harus ditanyakan ya tadi. Is it really a solutions or it is a perceived solutions? Okay, so what I mean by that, perceived means ini udah betul solusinya atau kita berpikir itu jawabannya. I mean, like that's very biased, right? If you already knows you want to research on this, but you sort of know it will gear towards that directions. When I do research about the parents in epidemiology, I kind of sense that it will head toward certain directions, but I should not let that sunk in. It should not, itu nggak boleh ditanam ke diri saya. Kenapa? Karena the moment I have that, it will be biased. If you really think that you want to research on that, then you have to sort of put away, unlearn, leave all those kind of biases, and then take the research approach carefully. Tadi misalnya ya apa? Saya udah punya biases. Oh pasti apa yang lebih prone untuk misinform itu adalah pendidikan yang bergantung pada jenjang pendidikan dan sebagainya. Kita pasti punya asumsi kayak gitu kan. Ternyata hasil temuannya not really as what you expect. So the one that I perceived earlier, it wasn't fact. It was a perceived answer. It was a perceived solutions, but it wasn't a solutions. Why? Because when you run the actual research, you find the real answer. So to justify how to make it academically sound is the entire process, not only the research problem. Problem statement is just to set the ground. This is what I want to research on. But the entire things that makes it academically sound is the entire executions of the research. Is your literature review extensive? Is your methodologically suitable for your research? Sometimes I've seen the problem statement X, but the methodology is totally not suitable at all for the research. I've seen it at PhD level, I've seen it at master level, I've seen it at undergraduate. We don't have that many research projects, but postgraduate level, I've seen it a lot because I have to examine a lot of thesis. So I kind of sense that biases is the one that sort of put you away from the actual facts. If only you understand the problem carefully, you would be able to know this is the methodology, this is the approach that I should take. This is the way I should do this is the way I should conduct the data collections. This is how I should make the instrument. And this is how these are the sample that I should really research on. Sometimes sometimes the first few parts was okay, and then suddenly suddenly some people wants to get an easy way by distributing the questionnaire to people that has no relations at all to the problem statement. So you got the wrong conclusions, right? Because you asked the wrong people. So what makes it academically sound, Mas Bambang? The whole journey, not only the problem statement. Okay, so that perceived solutions, it may not be true if you really conduct the research academically. I've learned so many times from my research. Why I love to do research, because I always learn new things, not because I want to prove myself right. In most cases, I wasn't right, in fact. So, but yeah, so I learn new things. So if you're able to learn from your research, means that you have conducted research carefully. Does it answer your questions? Sorry.
Yes, thank you, Professor.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Is there any other questions? Do we still have time, Dr. Muhammad?
Yes, Prof, we still have time.
Okay, great. Okay, anyone else, please? I haven't heard any sister. If any sister want to ask questions. Or all the girls are very shy. Shy is one thing that I don't have much, so Muhammad knows this well.
Oke, Prof, mungkin saya nambahi ya daripada bengong-bengong kita.
Go ahead.
Okay, Prof, about rationale of study ya, is it sufficient ya if we try to defend or try to justify the importance of the significance of our study by using our, let's say, statistics or let's say using our philosophical thinking rather than we utilize or we try to put some other citation. Karena sekarang ini kan banyak problemnya ya, kalau saya lihat ya dalam penelitian dan sebagainya, selalu pertanyaan penguji itu pasti mana nih rujukannya ya, mana referensinya gitu. Is it okay atau memang harus seperti itu? Karena kan kalau kita ngomongi gap ya atau alasan untuk kita melakukan studi kan seringnya sedikit penelitian di situ. Nah, ketika sedikit ya berarti kan bisa saja kita tidak menemukan gitu, sehingga akhirnya kita tertarik untuk menelitinya. So how we counter this kind of paradigm or this kind of perspective that mostly the examiner have when they try to ask us about the kind of issue.
Okay, I have to answer that from two perspectives. Okay, so first, is it okay if I found this is very novel? Kalau risetnya tuh baru banget, emang nggak pernah ada yang meneliti sebelumnya. And that is very common, I think, for some people who are so passionate about the research. It's just that they weren't able to see that people have been actually researching that using different kind of keywords. Okay, so just because that keywords, the one that you propose, is not there, doesn't mean nobody have done it. Okay, so so one thing I think what I need to highlight. So the first one is, have you done the due diligence? Okay, so udah betul-betul hati-hati nggak? Udah betul coba cek bahwa ada mungkin terminologi lain yang dipakai, but it focusing on the same thing. So that the due diligence. If you have done that and you still couldn't find anything, then it is really novel, it is really new, no one have done it, then you justify the rationale by using the phenomenon. Okay, so I think you can justify using the phenomenon. So maybe it is not academically you don't have anything to refer in terms of academic, but a recent phenomenon, be that from newspaper or from where do you get those facts from? Where do you think that it is really happening? You must have basis, right? It doesn't feel right that you can justify using your feeling. I think that philosophy needs to be justified as well. Which phenomenon actually can help you to sort of solidify your problem statement? If you feel that it is not shown yet in the newspaper, but you do have some data, preliminary data, to actually kind of show the indications it is probably happening. That is what I meant by phenomenon as well. But it is not from the media, but it is backed by data. You can use that. It is very rare, very rare. I haven't read any thesis that I have examined actually using that kind of approach yet, but looking at the perspective of research per se, I don't see why not. I don't see why not. As long as you have done the first one, I think as long as you have done your due diligence, that you have not missed any literatures, you have done all the keywords, you have done all the review to potential keywords that might relate to yours, I think that would be fine, I think. And if there's anything research like that, that is gold. You should get Nobel, I think, for that, if you can really identify that kind of research. Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Prof.
Right, thank you.
Ini ada Mas Muhardi ya, kemarin nanya tentang rational study. Mungkin Mas Muhardi bisa share ke kita terkait dengan problemnya, terutama yang teknis lah ya, misalnya mau ngurus LPDP dan lain sebagainya. Mungkin Mas Muhardi bisa sharing ke kita.
Oke, selamat sore, Prof. Kalau Prof, saya mau tanya sedikit mengenai rationale of study. Nah, ketika kita menyusun rationale of study, which is for the research problem, the derivative or the problem statement will produce a research question, right, Prof? Jadi turunan dari problem statement itu pasti nanti akan menghasilkan sebuah research question. Nah, lalu bagaimana pertanyaan penelitian tersebut atau research question itu dapat mendukung topik penelitian dalam isu besarnya, with the big issue raised in our research background. Dan so bagaimana jika nanti kontribusi teoritis dan praktikal yang sudah kita lakukan itu bertolak belakang dengan hipotesis yang sudah ada, which is the hypothesis is not proven, Prof.
Yes, that's wonderful questions. I've got quite a lot of thesis that I've examined, and it's just focused on proving the hypothesis. I think that is a wrong mindset, that when you find a research with the opposite findings to your hypothesis means that it is not valuable. I'm so glad that my supervisor never trained me like that. I'm so glad that I was actually educated by a supervisor which is very open-minded, very careful in the research, very critically listen to me, not only nodding yes, what next? And that's probably what I did to Dr. Moharman, where he knows how many hours that we had in the debate session in my office sometimes. But again, I emphasize to all of my students, just because you cannot prove, just because your finding shows that it is, that your hypothesis is not proven, it is still a good finding if you're able to articulate the insights well. Okay, so what I mean by that is, say just now, like I give you an example, right? The education is actually affecting how parents assess the informations, and I have put in my hypothesis, for example, the higher the educations, the more likely they have less issues, or the more less likely they will be misinformed. okay, because they have the educations, they should be able to assess the informations. To my surprise, the findings is totally off. Why? Because most of the lower educations, parents with lower educations level, they don't really consult internet. And it was the people with higher level educations, I'm not going to say educated, but higher level of educations, they are the one that actually consulted the internet. So the chances of them being misinformed is more likely than the lower education, people with lower education level. So of course it's against, but does it mean my findings is not used? No, it is still meaningful. Why? So that all this while our assumptions that saying you have to train, you have to give the skills of assessing information to the lower education and all those kind of assumptions is incorrect. Why? Because they don't really use internet for checking whether these medicines should be given to my kids or not. They are less vulnerable in terms of that. So where the resources should be given, you should educate the higher educated level people. Why? Because they are the one that actually probably proliferate all those misinformations even further to the society, because they actually consume it without thinking. So I think it's not an issue at all. It is good whatever result is good if you're able to articulate, even if it's supporting the hypothesis, but you were not able to articulate. I've seen some of my the thesis that I've examined and I put as a major corrections because they were not able to articulate what's that mean. So there's no problem, Mas Muhardi, if it's against the hypothesis. The good and bad is not lies on whether it's supporting or rejecting the hypothesis. The good of the research lies in what the insights can you offer to the society.
Okay, thank you, Prof.
All right.
Next, maybe I want to ask about how do we find the novelty if the hypothesis is not proven, Prof? Can an unproven hypothesis be turned into a novelty?
Yeah, so just now the novelty of my research just now, when my hypothesis was not proven, the novelty of that, I actually highlighted the approach that the government should take when it comes to educating parents for information, health information seeking. So that is the fundamentals. The fundamentals contributions of my research. So who should be approached? What would be the best mode to approach? Which income bracket that they should be focused on, because giving the same information to everyone will be a waste of energy. Which area, because it covers a lot of areas in the country. So that is the novelty. So we can come up with some kind of policy implications for policy. So that is the novelty of the research. So yeah, so I think the novelty, the researcher would be able to articulate it better once you have seen other factors that kind of affect why such findings actually emerge, right? Because you don't reject hypothesis simply because of one question. There are multi-factors, right? So you articulate what are the factors possibly affecting that kind of outcomes.
Okay, thank you very much, Prof, for the information.
Thank you. Does it answer your questions? Mas Muhardi, does it answer your questions?
Nothing, Prof, just enough.
Oh, okay, but is it clear just now?
Yes, it's clear for me because I really are concerned about the novelty, because for the PhD program, they should be about the novelty from my supervisor. So yeah. I just asked to myself, what about the hypothesis is not proven? Is it a good novelty, or I must to change about how my subject of the research?
Novelty has nothing to do with supporting or rejecting hypothesis. Novelty has nothing to do with that.
But the process can be the novelty, Prof.
Novelty is the entire thing that you offer. Okay, so novelty is just not the hypothesis, but the entire research that you're actually working on. If the same thing has been researched on in, there's a lot of misunderstanding. Just because it has been done, for example, in Malaysia and it hasn't been done in Indonesia, so that is the novelty. No, the novelty is not because no one has done it in Indonesia. I think you have to understand you have to understand what is novelty. Novelty is when it is not only people doesn't have done it, but when they do it, when you research on it, will that helps to answer things that has no answer before. So for example, if I replicate my research in Indonesia and I took exactly as is, it may not be novel. Why? Because I don't put the right context. So what would be a good novel research that I can improve? So maybe I should look at a lot of issues related to developing countries with different ethnicities. Maybe ethnicities is one of the factors that I should be consider, because in Malaysia we only have 3 ethnics, right? Malay, Chinese, and Indians. But in Indonesia we don't talk about ethnicities. But will it be a factor that I should put in, or it may not be? So I think we have to put the right context. The whole thing will contribute to the novelty. So not just because of people have done it in Malaysia, no one has done it in Indonesia, and it becomes novel. No, I don't buy those kind of novelty. Novelty has to be all-rounder topic, and not based on whether you will find whether the hypothesis will be proven or supported or rejected. It has nothing to do with that. And shouldn't you think about novelty way before the hypothesis is proven or rejected? I think you should think novelty since day one you want to do research, right? Before you find the data, even before you actually design the research. Novelty should be as early as defining the problem statement. Okay.
It's very clear, Prof. Thank you very much for the advice.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. All right. Anything else?
Prof, mungkin dari ini ya, mahasiswi fast track ya, biar ada perwakilan dari wanitanya ya. Oke, Titi Sari mungkin bisa ditanyakan pertanyaan terkait, kan kamu fast track nih ya. Nah, daripada kamu nanya saya terus ya, mungkin bisa tanya ke Prof ya, supaya dapat jawaban. Oke, persilakan, kita persilakan Titi Sari. Halo, ada Titi Sari? Itu saya yang bertanya, mungkin terkait dengan ini, Prof. Kan mahasiswa fast track ini sudah menyelesaikan TA-nya ya, Prof. Terus ketika mereka mengerjakan S2-nya, is it okay if we try to extend, ataupun kita mau ya add certain additional, atau ya try to see from different perspective, atau see from different dimension, atau apalah gitu ya, terkait dengan TA itu gitu. Atau bagaimana cara yang sebaiknya harus kita lakukan untuk supaya biar cepat gitu, jangan cari penelitian yang baru gitu.
Okay, so for master, what do you do? Because fast track tadi kan ya, mau dibuat PhD gitu ya maksudnya ya?
Untuk enggak, fast track dari S1. Jadi dia udah lulus S1. So how we define the difference between this is magister, this is just S1 bachelor gitu.
Okay. So what is the expected contributions at master level gitu ya? Okay. Interesting. I think kayaknya bakal debat seharian nih kalau saya highlight what is my expectations. I think usually setiap institusi punya ekspektasi masing-masing ya. But rules of thumb biasanya yang generic itu is on the at undergraduate level. We are not really because we just want to train the exposure to how research is being conducted. So it may not be like you have to be, I'm not sure how to put it, like you don't really have to be too exposed to theories or what else? Research paradigm, all those kind of things. I don't think you would be expected to cover that deep. But you would need to know how, what is the problem, what is the questions, what people have done and then you review that in the literature review, and how would you do a methodology? How do you adopt a methodology? What kind of a methodology will you adopt? And then data collections, analysis, and that's it. Okay, at master level, we would expect at least you would have some exposure to some theories, although it may not be about proving or disapproving theories, but you should have some exposure to the potential theories that you might actually use. At PhD level, we go into philosophical level. So, like for example, I'm not keen into like people just adopt technology acceptance model and that's become a PhD. Well, I think for those who have been examined by me, they know how strict I am when people just adopt a theory just for the sake of having theory in the PhD. Because at the PhD level, you have to really look at the theory in philosophically. Like for example, Davis technology acceptance model that Davis developed in 1980s, 85, I think, right? You should see how that theory is actually developed. Davis is actually developing in the theories in the lab with people actually using the same kind of applications and the same kind of objects, which is all students. And now you want to use that in different kind of settings where people actually using different kind of system. How would you know that those variables are still relevant? How do you know that those variable is still suitable to be included? So I think at PhD level, if you use the model just for the sake of using it, that would not be a level of PhD level, because it doesn't really shows that you have that capabilities to assess things in philosophical manner. So yeah, and even if you don't use methodology, if you don't use theories at all, or previous theories at all, you should be able to justify. Like for example, in my case, I don't use TAM. I'm researching on e-commerce, but I don't think TAM was suitable because on my time, e-commerce is very new in Indonesia and people actually using different platforms. How do I know that they can actually assess ease of use? It's totally different system. How can that variables relevant to my research? So you should be able to do that at PhD level. But master level, you have some exposure, but not into that kind of scrutiny to previous theories and adopting theories. It should not be just an easy way of thinking. Yeah. So master, I think you get some kind of expectations, right? You get what I mean, right? Yeah. So you expose them, but the thinking process are different between 1 or 2 years. Oh, I think most of the master is around 1.5 years, isn't it? Yep. So PhD is around 3 years. So that extra years has to be meaningful at some points. So that extra years should be meaningful, not only in different kind of data being collected, but also the thinking processes has to be much more deeper.
Oke, thank you, Prof.
All right.
Untuk yang lain masih ada pertanyaan?
I really look forward for the girls to ask questions, please.
Ini pada malu-malu mereka di balik hijab jadi ya, Prof.
I see. Pakai bahasa Indonesia deh, atau bahasa Sunda lah, biar ramai.
Mungkin Widya, saya yang malah. Oke, mungkin Widya bisa nanya. Ini termasuk mahasiswi teladan kita, Prof. Widya, ada pertanyaan?
Iya, Prof.
Silakan.
Silakan.
Ini Indonesia ya, Prof.
Iya, boleh, silakan.
Bahasa. Yang ingin saya pertanyakan di sini terkait dengan, kan macam-macam ya kalau terkait dengan riset gitu kan. Terkadang tuh kita sebagai pemula gitu ya, awalnya tuh bingung membedakan seperti bagaimana sih ini riset termasuk yang sistem semantik kah ataupun eksperimental. Nah, kira-kira seperti apa dan bagaimana ya cara kita agar cepat paham gitu, Prof?
Oke, cepat paham cara melakukan research atau formulasi problemnya?
Iya, terkait dengan problemnya gitu ya, Prof ya. Terkadang kan suka rancu gitu, kadang kita mau pakai semisal sistematik, ternyata ketika di review itu menggunakan eksperimental gitu, seperti itu.
Okay. Experiment. Okay, so experimental is more about how you do things. Systematic review is about the kind of approach, cara mereview literatur. I have to be careful because one of my friends is a big advocate of yang paling sangat mempromosikan systematic literature review. So I myself doesn't really subscribe to that. You have to be quantifying the qualitative. Okay, so one of the weaknesses, I think, some people who took SLR very lightly is they're trying to know the keywords and then they are trying to see whether it is sufficient enough, whether the numbers justify the kind of coverage. Okay, so I have to make sure I understood the questions in the same way as you asked. So your questions is on the review, I think, right? On the right. Literature review, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So ketika Mbak Widya mereview literatur, memang ada banyak approach. One of the way is to actually menggunakan SLR, yang systematic literature review, which is you identify the keywords and then there's a certain process with that, and the other way is to use the semantic. What are the similarities? I mean, like there are so many ways. Apart from that, because I don't want to against those people. As I said, one of my friends is big advocate of that, so I respect her very much. But it's just that the moment that you feel that is something that stops you from being critically able to analyze, okay, then that will be the biggest mistakes. It will lead to a mistake. Yang sekarang banyak terjadi adalah ketika orang menggunakan SLR, mereka bukan lagi mereview, tapi jadinya malah jadi summarize what people have done. Review is not summarizing. Review is about reading and understanding and critically assess. Like, for example, when you read my article, it is possible that you are disagree with my stand. Okay, although my statement is based on fact, but it is possible that you can compare with other studies from other countries. For example, maybe some similar things have been done in Europe, and they don't actually use survey, they actually use interview. And you found that their findings is much more relatable to yours. So it is okay. It is fine. So you compare, you review when you review. So for example, Kartiwi on 2020 found this is blah, 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 blah. And then different to what she found in Malaysia. X 2021 found that it is the findings is different. I mean, the findings shows that blah, 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 blah. So which is different from what Kartiwi found. So it is okay. That is what review is all about. You are not making your claim, but you are saying there are differences in the literature. Some people that use SLR, it's not the problem is with the SLR per se, but they get too convenient with the technique. They become too mechanical. Jadi fokusnya cuman yang ini 20 artikel talking about this, put in the table and that's it. The next one is people who are actually against, put in a table and that's it. So what did you review? It wasn't a review, it was just like a summary. So the SLR becomes a summary, which is shouldn't be like that. You summarize, okay, but what your thoughts, what you feel about those articles? The fact that a lot of research using quantitative, do you think that is the only way for you to solve that problems? How about if you would want to use qualitative? Does it mean it is not allowed just because a lot of people actually using survey? So that is what the review is all about. Charting a different path for you to do research. Okay, so jadi nggak masalah Mbak Widya kalau misalnya ternyata pakai SLR kok nggak nyaman ya, kayaknya ini bukan cara yang harus saya lakukan dan You use different things. It's not about SLR or not SLR. It's about your research. What do you want to find? I think that would be the first questions that you should be able to answer. Does it answer your questions?
Yes, Prof. Berarti intinya ketika kita mau pakai systematic review ini berarti bukan hanya terkait dengan berapa jumlah, tetapi bagaimana opini kita gitu ya terhadap.
Ya, bagaimana apa yang kita baca itu menambah cara memperbaiki cara berpikir kita mengenai masalah yang kita formulasikan di chapter 1. Ya, so because I'm very sure, saya yakin pasti nanti setelah baca jadi tahu ternyata problem kayak gini harusnya ditambah faktor yang ini gitu. Nah, di literatur review kan nanti kebaca ya. Kalau kita fokus pada jumlah, terus faktornya tadi yang cuma satu artikel apa mau nggak dimasukkan kan nggak juga gitu ya. So I think you have to be careful.
Clear.
All the
Thank you.
Great. Okay, thank you. All the best.
Oke, ini systematic literature review nanti mau kita ajarkan, Prof, di waktu malam
that's
nanti.
Nice. Okay. Yeah, but just be careful, okay, when teaching the techniques. You have to put the caveats as well.
Problemnya, apakah kita menawarkan banyak metode, terus kemudian mahasiswa memilih, atau mahasiswa memilih langsung gitu tanpa kita ajarkan metodenya. This kind of philosophical issue.
Yeah,
Okay,
but
Prof.
Just don't get the trap into mechanical. I think a lot of research now it becomes too mechanical.
Yes.
Mechanical, when it becomes too mechanical, the society will not be able to benefit from it because it seems that everything is already scripted. Research should not be scripted, right? Research is the opportunities for the researcher to learn. So when it is scripted, when you want to make sure that it has to be that finding, otherwise it's not meaningful. No, it's biased. Then we are not really doing a good research if it's too mechanical.
Karena tuntutan ini juga, Prof, harus lulus tepat waktu.
Well, yeah.
Okay.
Same problem here.
Oke, ada lagi yang mau bertanya? Kita persilahkan. Oke,
yang sister nggak ada nih, satu lagi mungkin, so that I can sleep well tonight. I don't feel I entertain a lot of brothers. So any sister yang all the girls, or shall I call name? Ada lagi yang mau tanya? Aisyah Rahmadillah. So happen that your name is on the top, so sorry if I call you.
Oke, mungkin Mutiara. Ini Mutiara juga termasuk murid yang hebat nih, Prof.
I see, alright, nice.
Silahkan Mutiara. Daripada nanya ke saya kan, saya orangnya nggak sabaran, mending nanya ke yang lebih sabar.
Oh gitu ya, Dr. Marman nggak sabar ya.
Oke, silakan Mutiara masih online.
Sesama Nasution, ayo silahkan.
Nah, sesama Nasution ini Dr. Mira Nasution juga nih.
Cuman nggak dipakai aja nih warganya. Silakan, ayo.
Silakan Mutiara.
Oh iya Pak.
Ya silakan.
Mengenai ini Bu, apakah bisa jika nanti kalau misalnya saya ngambil penelitian itu dari yang sudah ada, tapi lebih didetailkan lagi, gimana Prof? Apakah harus pakai metodologi yang sama dengan cara yang sama atau bagaimana ya, Prof?
Oke, ini buat apa nih? Master atau undergrad?
Buat
S1
master.
atau S2? Buat master.
S2.
Buat S2, penelitiannya udah ada, udah banyak?
Sumbernya, referensinya.
Udah di literatur udah banyak?
Sekitar
referensinya udah banyak?
2 atau 3 gitu.
Oh,
cuman yang satunya belum ini, belum fix gitu, agak inilah belum yang bukan utama gitu.
Okay. Again, it's not so much on how many. When I said banyak means that udah cukup komprehensif belum pembahasannya di literatur yang bukan, jadi enggak 2 kalau sangat komprehensif udah mengcover semua faktor dan sangat konteks yang nanti akan diteliti di Indonesia kurang lebih sama gitu ya. Ya walaupun 2 tapi udah ekstensif, biasanya kita nggak akan terlalu melihat itu sebagai something that is worth research on. But if it's something like, for example, tadi ya, misalnya impact of COVID on back to the initial questions ya, impact of COVID on household income and how it affects the children education. Kalau misalnya sudah dibuat di Malaysia, udah gitu literatur misalnya banyak bahas tentang di Malaysia. Dan Malaysia dengan Indonesia kurang lebih secara kultur, secara struktur kurang lebih sama ya. Mungkin walaupun secara economic development mungkin a little bit different, but I think in a way it's a kind of similar. Then you have to be careful whether the factors that you want to include in is something that would be relevant to Indonesia. So for example, penelitiannya ada 10 faktor. Nah, 10 faktor mau dipakai juga di Indonesia. You have to be really careful just because it is in the literature. So I think you have to be able to see whether those are the factors that you would include. If you feel that you want to replicate tadi ya, karena replications of study is common. A lot of people actually doing that. It's just that they put the local context to it. So you're not going to pick exactly as is and then use that in Indonesia. Keep in mind, as much as we are similar, we are not the same. So I think you have to be careful on whether certain factors may not be relevant to Indonesia at all. Like for example, the one that I said just now, ethnicity. We don't have that much issues with ethnicities in Indonesia, but if you feel that something you need to really test, whether the finding in Jawa Barat will be different with Jawa Tengah, by all means, then probably that should be something that could be interesting to find out. But I myself doesn't feel that ethnicities that we have in Malaysia would be applicable to Indonesian context. So maybe you should be able to see how those factors that is not relevant to Indonesia may not be included, or you put in additional factors. So replications is okay. So the answer is replications is okay, but look at the context and see how extensive the literature can really help you to support that research. Okay, so help you to support the rationale as well in a way. Does it answer your questions?
Berarti Prof, idealnya untuk referensi itu kira-kira berapa ya Prof? Sebanyak-banyaknya atau bagaimana?
Oke. Saya kalau ditanya kayak gitu biasanya gini, how much, there's no answer for how much enough is enough. Okay. Biasanya mungkin Dr. Muhammad juga dulu kayak pernah nanya ini ya, berapa banyak sih harus dibaca?
Kalau saya dulu langsung set 1000.
Dia
sanggup
gambar.
akhirnya.
dia ekspektasinya di atas saya, jadi nggak apa-apa lah. saya relakan waktu itu. But no, it doesn't. There's no specific requirements on how much enough is enough. When it is enough, it is enough when you have sound ground. Ini cukup ketika Mbak Mutiara tahu bahwa yes, I have covered what kind of issues that is need to be answered extensively. Again, if the research that you have is mungkin related untuk topik itu mungkin ada 15, mungkin. But that is one side of the story kan. Tadi kan kayaknya gini deh. Tadi topik untuk yang soal income gitu ya. Mungkin income impact on household mungkin ada sedikit. Tapi kalau kita lihat lagi tadi misalnya dari sisi yang lain impact dari parents income to education ada lagi kan literaturnya. Impact literatur yang misalnya kaitannya dengan COVID, dengan retrenchment, kehilangan pekerjaan ada lagi literaturnya. Jadi kalau misalnya dari satu studi itu cuman ada 10, kayaknya it doesn't make sense. Not because it is less, but because of that topics have multiple angles and you can get literatures from the multiple perspective. So how much enough is enough? Have you covered that other perspective? Have you covered the multiple perspective that helps you to understand the problems better? That would be when it is enough. So not how many. Benchmark is your understanding of the problems and your justifications of the problems. Okay?
Okay, Prof. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All the best. Good luck ya.
Amin, amin, insya Allah.
Oke, terima kasih Prof. Ini lumayan ini juga ya, take time. Tapi Prof luar biasa ya, tetap tabah ya dan tegar menghadapi pertanyaan-pertanyaan tersebut.
No, it's good questions. I love learning from questions. It's good. Alhamdulillah.
Terima kasih Prof atas insight-nya ya, juga masukan-masukannya, sehingga mudah-mudahan ini jadi berkah bagi kita semua ya.
Amin, amin ya Allah.
Dan juga menambah motivasi ataupun memudahkan ya proses inisiasi ataupun memilih topik bagi para mahasiswa dan juga dosen-dosen kita. Terima kasih sekali lagi Profesor atas ininya.
Sama-sama.
Mudah-mudahan kita bisa ketemu lagi ya, Prof.
Amin, amin. Right.
Dalam
Terima kasih
acara-acara
semuanya.
yang
Assalamualaikum, selamat sore. Saya boleh langsung leave ya?
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi
Assalamualaikum
wabarakatuh.
warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Silakan Prof.
Terima kasih, Prof.
Oke, thank you. All the best. Sama-sama.
Terima kasih, Prof.
Prof.
All the best. Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Oke, untuk yang lain kita mohon ya partisipasinya untuk kuis ya. Nanti akan kita adakan atau kita serahkan sertifikasi bagi yang nilainya 80 ke atas. Ini sekitar 15 soal ya, benar dan salah. Oke, mungkin kepada Taufik bisa dipersiapkan untuk
baik, terima kasih Pak. Selamat sore semuanya. Jadi kita ini akan melakukan kuis ya. Mungkin boleh untuk izin saya share screen Pak.
Oke, sudah, silakan.
Oke teman-teman, layar saya sudah muncul ya. Untuk teman-teman dipersilakan join ke link quizzes. Untuk linknya sudah saya kirim di chat Zoom ya. Dan juga untuk kodenya. Oke, ditunggu ya untuk teman-teman segera join. Bisa menggunakan nama asli ya.
Ya, mohon menggunakan nama asli ya, supaya kita bisa mencetak atau ngeprint sertifikasinya sesuai nama asli.
Oke, untuk jumlah pesertanya di sini ada 61. Mungkin teman-teman yang lain bisa segera join ya. Kalau ada yang terkendala join, bisa chat di Zoom-nya ya. Oke, apakah ada yang masih belum join? Sudah 55, apakah sudah semua? Oke, kalau misal tidak ada, untuk kuisnya akan saya start ya. Kepada teman-teman, semangat mengerjakan ya.
Oke. Buat big quiz bentar, Bu. Tujuan dari masalah. Aduh. Akan sangat membantu untuk membuat masalah sebagai rumus. Alasan yang dipikirkan dengan matang dapat memberikan pembenaran. Latar belakang semua penelitian yang telah dilakukan pada topik. Apa? Ya, kok bisa? Rasional pembelajaran adalah pembenaran untuk pengetahuan yang bisa dikasih. Masalah menggambarkan mana problem yang harus dilakukan.
Mbak tadi berapa Mbak yang dapat sertifikat?
Oke, benar sekitar ini ya, 11.
Oh, alhamdulillah.
yang 80 ke atas kan ya Pak ya?
Ya, hampir-hampir lah. Kalau 11 kan sekitar 70 sekian lah ya.
Oh, masih ditoleransi ya kalau 11 ya?
Toleransi ya, berarti kan 77 kan. Nah, itu udah kita anggap 80.
Siap, makasih Pak.
Kalau udah dapat sertifikat, boleh live, Pak?
Ya, silakan, boleh live.
Oke. Terima kasih ya, Pak.
Ya, silakan.
Ya.
Terima kasih Pak.
Ya, Assalamualaikum.
Terima kasih Pak, izin live.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Oke, sudah semua nih ya. Yang penting datanya sudah ada di kita, nanti insya Allah kita akan cetak ya dalam seminggu 2 minggu ini.
Pak.
Oke, ada sekitar 7 lagi nih kayaknya belum selesai.
Pak, izin pulang, Pak.
Izin live, Pak. Terima kasih banyak. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Pak Lubis,
izin live ya Pak. Terima kasih Pak.
Terima kasih.
Pak Lubis, terima kasih Pak Lubis.
Sama-sama Pak.
Terima kasih Pak.
Terima kasih, Pak.
Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Sudah semuanya nih. Ya,
Bapak mau tanya, untuk kelas Medlit jadi jam 18.30, Pak?
Ya, mungkin agak telat sedikit ya, 15 menit. Saya mau sholat.
Baik, Pak. Terima kasih.
Yuk, sama-sama. Oke, sudah semua ini? Ada berapa lagi?
Ada sisa 2 lagi, Pak.
2 lagi ya. Oke, take your time. Ini ada waktunya nggak ya? Ada kan?
Ada, Pak. Di masing-masing soalnya ada waktunya. 30 detik tiap soal.